Hey, Griff Hamlin here. In today's video, I'm going to talk about vibrato, which is something that I get asked an awful lot about. And I have kind of a standard answer that most people really don't care for, which is vibrato isn't something to really work on. Vibrato, by and large, at least in my experience, sort of takes care of itself when you're ready for it. However, like I said, that answer doesn't really sit well. And so rather than have people kind of mess around and try to figure it out and do it wrong, I'm going to do my best to describe how vibrato comes to be and the different types of vibrato that you can use. But I really want to preface this with the fact that if you can't play the notes that you want to play cleanly without vibrato, trying to add vibrato isn't going to work out. If you really can't play the notes clean, trying to add vibrato just isn't going to happen. You'll really just end up making a mistake, and you'll lose the note, and all kinds of bad things will happen, and vibrato won't be one of them. So keep that in mind as you're trying this. There's a couple of different styles of vibrato, and so I just kind of want to make this clear first, the one that we're not going to do. And that's kind of a classical style of vibrato where, for example, I'm playing the 10th fret on my second string here, and what I'm going to actually do is rock my finger back and forth like that. Now, that actually requires, what I'm doing is you can almost hear, it's very, very subtle. I'm actually lowering the pitch of the string ever so slightly because I'm actually sort of shortening it on that end and raising it on that end. It's almost imperceptible. It's really hard to make that work. But when I add it with the opposite motion going the other direction, you hear, and it's a very smooth sound. The reason that that's such a smooth vibrato sound, it's not a lot. You're not changing, vibrato being a change in pitch. I guess that's important to note. But I'm not changing the pitch very much. And in the case of that classical vibrato, I'm actually going below the pitch slightly and above the pitch slightly. So the gap between the lowest and the highest pitch, maybe a quarter step or so. That's a lot easier to do on a nylon string guitar, by the way. On a steel string guitar, it'll work, but you notice that I'm like shaking my guitar to get it to happen. And if I had to do that all night, my fingers would be really, really, really tired. So that's really not, in general, how an electric guitar player is going to achieve vibrato. Now, the way we're going to do it from a blues or a rock standpoint is we're only going to raise our pitch from the standard pitch. We're going to go up about a quarter of a step. Okay, now what I mean by that is if I take again this 10th fret, let's do it, we'll do it on the first string. If I bend up a half a step, that makes the 10th fret sound like the 11th. And I don't want to go that far. So you kind of got to get a feel for how far that is first. I'm going to go maybe about that far, kind of halfway there. And so you'll notice that I've got my thumb over the top, which is kind of important because I'm basically squeezing my hand right now. So I'm with these fingers, I'm pushing up, but my whole hand is really clamping down on the guitar neck. It's coming around it from all sides. So my thumb is pushing really hard. These fingers are pushing really hard. If I just do the clamp motion, it's just a bend. Okay, but it's most definitely a clamp. But the thing that doesn't wear me out is the fact that I don't go very far. Just that little bit. So it doesn't actually take a whole lot of strength to just get that little bit. And then what I do is just do that and relax. Do that and relax. So it's tension and release, tension and release. So it's tension, release, tension, release, tension, release. I have a little bit of overdrive on my tone specifically to get that little extra bit of sustain. Without that, you're going to have a hard time working on it because the note's going to die out so fast. So I have just a little bit there. Little clamp, little release, little clamp, little release. And that'll work on any string. So I'm going up slightly and back. Now, if I'm on lower strings, I would actually pull. Fourth string might go either way. If I pulled on it, or if I pushed, either one would work. Fifth string, if I push on it, I might roll it off the fretboard. I'm just not used to. Typically, if I was going to bend a note on the fifth string, I would pull it. So I would do that. So I'm used to doing that. So I wouldn't. That's when I do vibrato. It's the same thing. Or on the sixth string. Now, in all of those cases, I used my third finger. And if you're going to practice this, really it's just doing it slowly. And just keeping on it until it's comfortable. And you can do it a little bit faster. Now, if you want kind of a frantic type of vibrato, in order to do that, I actually have to let go. And my whole hand has to shake up and down. And that's really tough because my right hand really comes into play there in muting out. If I just do that, it makes everything ring out because my hands are stepping all over other strings to do that. So if I'm trying to do a really erratic type of vibrato like that, my right hand really has to clamp down with the palm. My index finger on my right hand is actually touching my first string to keep it muted, and my palm is clamping down on some of the lower strings to get that to happen. It's a pretty unusual sound. It's not something you hear all the time, but in the event that that's what you were trying to do, it would work. Now, in all those instances, I'm using my third finger. So let's say that I was going to do a vibrato with my first finger, and it would work the same for the second finger or the pinky. All of those are basically just a bend, okay? It's just a subtle bend repeated over and over and over again. First finger vibrato is a little bit differently, and you know, we all see B.B. King doing that sort of flutter. Again, to be truthful, it's kind of almost a small bend. You know, if I was going to bend a note with my first finger, I would really have to use my wrist to get that bend to happen. And you can see I've got the other fingers fanned out to get that leverage and torque that note up. Now, fortunately, I don't have to go very far again, so I'm just kind of squeezing and releasing. The trick is when you do the release not to let go of the note and actually kill it. So you have to constantly keep enough pressure on the note so that it rings, and then enough extra pressure to get the bend. So it's very subtle. And that tends to be, I think, what causes the most trouble, is because it's such a subtle motion. You know, we're used to kind of, particularly when you're just learning, you know, everything is kind of a monkey thing. You know, you're just like really getting on it, trying to do everything, and you tend to use strength to overcome technique. And in this case, you really can't. If you try to use your strength to overcome the technique, it's just going to get all out of tune, and it's just not really going to sound good. So the main thing is to just think of vibrato as a very subtle bend that you repeat over and over and over again. Now, this all assumes that the note you're starting with is a normal, regular note and not something that you've already bent. So if I've got a note that I've already bent, I'm actually going to release and re-push again. Now with these notes, I can actually go below and above. I can do more of that classical style bend because I'm controlling the pitch. So I can go, if there's my note, I can go down and up and down. You know, I can go around the pitch that I want. That'll give it a little bit of a smoother sound, but it's really hard to hear. So typically what I'll do, and what I think most people do, is just go below and back up. So what I'm doing is I've got this note that's bent, and I relax it a little bit, and then I push it back up, and then I relax it. So again, it's something that you can just kind of sit and try. But what's tricky about that is that usually as you work on it, it gets your starting pitch gets lower and lower, and it kind of does, just sort of dies off. So you really got to watch that, because otherwise it just doesn't sound good. You've got to make sure that you keep the original pitch consistent while you're trying to play with all that stuff. And that's why I say if you can't play the note cleanly ahead of time, I call vibrato sugar. I always say you just put a little sugar on the note. If you can't play the note cleanly, trying to add a little sugar to the note just isn't going to work out. So hopefully this has answered some questions, and you've got some things you can work on. And good luck with that, and I'll see you soon.